morning and welcome to Black Economics TV. We have with us Michelle Lowe, who is a relationship coach, certified relationship coach, no less. And she also uses holistic and spiritual methods to change people's lives where relationship breakdowns have happened. So welcome, Michelle.
Good morning. Thank you for welcoming me, should I say.
That's okay. Well, it's nice to have you with us. It's nice to actually meet people who are in different professions. You know, we've had people in the food business, fashion business, but you're the first person we have who are dealing with relationships, which is a very important part of many people's lives, and we mustn't forget that. And you've made a business out of it. So tell us about your business.
Well, I love what I do, and I love supporting people that innately think that they're less than, but it's all within them. So all I do is really sit with them and work with them over a period of weeks or months and pull out what innately is already there. Just bring to the forefront what they probably already know, but they need somebody who's a third party to sort of bring it to fruition. And the part that I love most is seeing the outcomes, seeing when people reach their desired goal, you know, when they find the abundance of love or whatever it is that they're looking for. Because even though I deal with relationships, the key thing that I start with is the relationship with yourself. You cannot have a relationship with anybody else if you don't have a relationship with yourself. So once we start with that and we look at where the areas are that may be in lack, and then we start working on those and building the confidence and working on where we want to be, then the other issues or concerns, we just work through them and they become so much easier because you're standing in your power then. You're feeling really strong about who you are and you start looking at life a little bit differently than you were, you know, maybe when you first came.
That's a very good point, actually. Looking at life differently. Maybe the problem looks different once you do that. And then maybe solutions start coming. Okay, fantastic. What started you doing what you're doing?
So I was invited to write an article. What do I call it? An article? A story in a book called Chocolates and Diamonds. It was an anthology of women from around the world. I think there were about 140 of us, and it ended up being a bestseller on Amazon. And it was just about your story. And I wrote a story about the divorce I'd been through. And just to give you a little background, I spent 30 years in living in New York. So even though I have this British accent and I've come back to England, I'm more American than I am English in many ways. And yet, you know, I feel like I'm half and half. And so I wrote about this marriage I'd been in and what I went through. And I had a resounding response from a lot of women that kept saying, how did you do it? Please tell me, how did you do it? I'm in a miserable marriage. I want to get out of it. I'm so proud of you. Where did you find the strength? And I said, wow, it was just self-preservation. So what I found was a resounding amount of women that really felt my story resonated with them. And I just thought it was really strange. I thought, wow, that's quite interesting, but didn't really do anything about it. The authors that wrote the book, we decided to have a celebration party because the book had become #1.
Wow.
We all, yeah, on Amazon. Can't remember how many weeks, because this was 2015, I believe it was. So we decided to do a little party with the women that were in the UK and get together. So we were all talking online. Yeah, I think it was Zoom, maybe it was Skype then, I can't remember, 2015. And we did this little launch party and we met each other. And one of the women came up to me, her name's Denise Harris, who's a coach. She has a Black woman. She has her own organization, her own company called Resonant Living. And she approached me and said, oh, so what kind of coaching do you do? You're amazing. Your story was great, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I don't even know what you mean. What do you mean, like hockey coach or something? Like, what kind of coach are you talking about? Because I'd never heard of coaching. And she looks at me and she said, you're not a coach? I said, no. She said, oh my God, Michelle, we've got to change it. There's a presence about you. There's an energy about you that people need. And I just thought, okay, here we go. Coming from a cynical New York perspective.
Oh.
Okay, here we go. The big sales pitch. What does she want? How much is it going to cost? Da, da, da. Like, yeah, you can suit me up, but I'm not going with it. So she's going on and on and on and on. Like, listen, we need to meet. I'm like, okay, fine. She said, here's my number, call me, let's make an appointment. Now, I'm somebody, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And I never called her. So, sales pitch. I've been there, seen that, done that. I lived in New York 30 years. I've seen it all. That was my attitude. She called me probably, I don't even know what the time span was, but she called me a few weeks later or something and said, I never heard from you. And her number one value is integrity. She said, I didn't get the sense that you were the kind of person that wouldn't return a call. And I said, I was like a deer in headlights because that's not me. I said, okay, fine. When do you want to meet? So I went along and I met with her. And I literally had this epiphany from this meeting with her. And she said, listen, I would like to train you to be a coach, but I come from a holistic perspective. And I was, sitting there, and she does some really cool stuff with you. And she gave me the outline for a book and all this other stuff. But she said, you've got a gift and you're not using it. You're a super manifester. You're not
Wow.
using it. You're just all these wonderful things. All these things before these terms were, became what they are now. And I said, all right, I'll do the coaching. I wasn't convinced. I was, but as we went through the training, I just started to say, wow, this just feels natural. This feels like me. And so in 2016, I think I finished the coaching in 2016, sometime around then. And then I said, I really want to specialize in relationships because I've had and still have really amazing relationships. My best friend in the UK has been my friend since I was 11 years old. And I'm not 25. We'll just leave it at that. And I have friendships that have lasted 40 years, 30 years, 25 years. I still have a contingency of great friends in New York, in America. I was in Cuba last week with my partner. One of my girlfriends from Chicago joined me. I'm just really good at relationships. I love relationships. And I think, as you sort of started the conversation with, it's sort of the baseline, the foundation of everything that we do. So then I decided to do some training with an American organization to become a certified relationship coach. And that went well. And then I just started coaching and I've had some really great success and really, really, really beautiful stories that have come out of the work that I've been doing.
Tell
So
us
yeah.
about some of your successes.
Well, obviously, when it comes to relationships, it's
With no names.
personal, obviously. But one of my favorite was a woman that came to me who said that she didn't feel like she could have children. She was in a relationship that wasn't working. Um, she had multiple personal issues, and she just felt, less than, and had been misdiagnosed with some sort of, identity thing. And I say thing because when she told me that, I said, oh, well, medical, where's the medical paperwork for that? Because one of the things that I do as a coach is if somebody has a medical problem, we make sure that we don't, that's not what I do. I'm not a professional doctor. I'm not a professional therapist. I'm, in terms of that's not what I do. I'm a coach. So I have to make sure that I don't cross the boundaries and give misinformation because that's not what I do. That's not my speciality. So then I found out that there was no official diagnosis. Some doctor, some nurse flippantly said, oh, you probably have such and such. And she ran with it. So you can just imagine the levels of lack of self-esteem. It just went down and down and down. And we really worked with it and we started from the bottom. And as I said to you, I do a lot of spiritual holistic stuff. So I work with crystals myself to get myself in that space, get myself ready. And then I do a lot of breath work with my clients to just calm them down. I try to teach them how to meditate, to get them in a space that, they're always conscious of where they are, where they're going. I'll just say, fast forward 2.5 years later, she married her then boyfriend and she just had a second child.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness.
She writes to me all the time. Oh my God, you changed my life. I can't tell you. Da, da, da. It's so just, that's one of my favorite stories. The few, and sometimes it's not even as big as that. Sometimes it's just moving you from A to D, taking you from a place of where you can't see the forest for the trees because you're just so overwhelmed, and
Mm,
taking you to another space where you can say, oh my God, I'm outside the forest and I can actually see which direction I need to go in.
mhm,
So it all depends on what the person is needing or
mhm,
lacking, and moving them from one place to another. Because I'm not there to fix anything. I'm very clear with people. I don't fix anything. You may think I'm fixing it, but innately, you know what you want, you know what you possess, but something is holding you back. And
mhm,
oftentimes, Dawn, we'll find that it's a parent that made a flippant comment to you. It might have been an ex-boyfriend, an ex-husband, an ex-wife, an ex-girlfriend, a school teacher that told you weren't good enough. It
mm,
can go all that way back. But
mhm,
until we unpeel the layers, we don't really know where this lack of self-esteem is coming from.
mhm,
So I kind of look at, where the issue stems from. And then I also, my number one thing is looking at values. I
mm,
take a close look at your values, because a lot of people will meet me and they'll say, "Oh, I need a boyfriend. Can you help me find a boyfriend?" And I'll say, "Oh, okay. We'll take a look at that," because I always know it's not just about finding the boyfriend. So we unpeel the layers and we start to find out, why is it that you're not meeting somebody? Is it something that you're blocking and you're not even aware of? Or is it something that you're looking for something that doesn't really exist?
mm,
You're looking for values in somebody that you don't even, you don't own them. You don't have those values. So why are you expecting that of somebody else?
mm,
And if you do have values, why are you looking at said person A when your values really say, I'm aligned with said person B? Are you looking for this person because your parents, your family said you need to marry a doctor, an accountant, or a lawyer? Or is it because all my friends are dating, blah, blah, blah? It's many things. So I treat my client almost like um, a beautiful onion. I just peel the layers really slowly,
yeah.
gradually, and go back to the core and see where we started, what started this journey that you're on, and how can we change that journey and make it something really beautiful for
Well,
you
so
to.
that's interesting because when you said you're a relationship coach, I thought you were just dealing with people who have bad relationships. But now, from what you just said, it sounds like you're also helping people who are looking for a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Wow.
I get what often happens is somebody comes to me with problem A, but it's never really about that. It's about you. It's about you. What is going on with you? And
Mm,
once we figure out what that is, and I don't know if we can resolve it, but we get to the root of it,
mhm,
then we start looking at these other issues. Because think about it with women and men. When a man has an argument with a woman, he's very clear about what he's arguing about. He's arguing about this pen at this time. Women, we tend to, not all of us, but we tend to say, yeah, I'm annoyed about the pen, but I'm going to talk about the pots you didn't wash last week. I'm going to talk about the light bulb you said you were going to change that you didn't change. You laugh, and me too, because we can relate to that. So it's a similar thing. People come in saying, "Oh, Fred, he did me wrong. He did da 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 da." But when we peel it back, yeah, Fred did some stuff, but it's really about stuff that's going on with you, and maybe why you even with Fred. Maybe,
mhm, mhm.
maybe you should never been with Fred.
Okay, okay. So
Depends.
if you have a married couple come to you and say, "Oh, we want our last legs, we don't listen to each other, we argue all the time, it's only peaceful when we don't talk, should we end this relationship or not?" What would you do?
I always ask them, let's have a conversation, let's have a dialogue. So what I do is I separate them. I meet with one person, because it could be same-sex couple. So I meet with person A first. Sounds very impersonal, person A, but I meet with one part of the couple alone, and I meet with the other couple alone, and I do that for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And then I get them together in a room, and it's really interesting. It's really interesting because what happens is they've told me everything and now they're comfortable with me. They've come to like and trust me and they've told me a lot of things and vice versa. Usually I find the person that didn't initiate it tends to be a bit resentful and, why am I here? And they're entitled to that. And then we start having the conversation. And what I tend to find is they start telling me, we're in dialogue with the three of us together. I do everything online, by the way. And, they're having this conversation. Well, they don't do this. They're supposed to do that, blah, 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 blah. And then the other person, da, da, da. But they're talking to me. And I have to say, take me out of it. You need to be telling that person what you've just said. Don't tell me. And you can see them almost, oh, I have to actually tell them that. Yeah, tell them what you've just told me. It's really interesting because a lot of times it's just so deep and we've got to dig and bring it up to the surface. And it's about being vulnerable. And it's really hard. And it's not necessarily, you might think, oh, it's always hard for the man, whatever. It's not. It's often really hard. The things, and you may or may not relate to this, but the things that we tend to love about somebody can also be the thing that we really dislike about them at the same time.
Wow.
So I'll give you an example. My own example. How about that? My partner is really organized, really lovely, really kind, really takes his time to do stuff. But on the flip side, when I need something to get done and he's taking his time and I'm pulling my hair out, it makes me crazy. But it's the exact same thing that I love about them that really annoys me about him in that example. So it's about finding a middle ground and figuring out what can you what's the right word? Not just accept, but what can you tolerate? Relationships about tolerance. What can you tolerate? What can you live with? And what can you not live with? And because no one's perfect, as you and I sort of talked about briefly earlier, no one's perfect. So what can I tolerate? I might not like it, but you know what? I can live with that. But I can't live with, I can live with them not always washing the plates. I can compromise and say, then just put them in the dishwasher. I just don't want to see the plates in the sink. Please do that for me. But I can't tolerate the toilet seat being up. There's no negotiation on that one. We try to work through the items bit by bit.
And it's interesting that sometimes yourself as a third party is needed to actually solve these problems that people make into a mountain. So really by the time you finish with them, the problems look smaller and maybe they get solved. Have you come across relationships that you've said is probably best if you guys split? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But I can't say that to them. They have to come to that conclusion. So I'll work it in a way that, if I tell you, you have to do this, you might not really do it. But if it comes from you and you really feel it in your heart that you need to do it, you will do it. So, I'll just draw some conclusions, I'll make some statements, and I'll leave it with them.
Okay, understood. What about relationships between parents and children, say a father and son? Have you dealt with that kind of situation?
Yeah, I've not, it's not my specialty. I don't really get a lot of that, to be honest. I do, but I don't really get a lot of it. But what I do find with men, a lot of times it's ego. Getting away. With a lot of people, it's ego. My ego's big and I won't say anything they don't want to be vulnerable. And that's part of the work. You've got to be open to being vulnerable. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
Easy. It's not easy to say I was wrong. Yeah. It's not easy to say I didn't know that. I didn't realize that when I said this or did this, it made you feel that way. I had no idea. Because most of us like to come over with bravado. Well, I don't care what they think. This is how it is. This is how it's going to go. The ego talking and talking and talking. And I try to say the ego's always going to be there, but we need to turn it off for a minute and really talk about how you feel. So it's deep work. The work is deep.
Okay. What about relationships at work, say between colleagues? who can't see eye to eye, or even between boss and employee. Do you do those
Yeah,
kind of relationships?
absolutely. And I talk to them about working closer the net, getting closer to the net. Think of a tennis match, and you try to reach a middle ground. You try to, it's not always about playing tennis and winning. Sometimes it's about getting close to the net and sort of just tipping it over the edge, getting your point over without destroying anyone, because we're not here to make anybody feel less than. And if you really feel as though you can't work out the relationship, then it's time to make a different decision.
Mm,
The goal is to reach a middle ground and figure out how you can work together. You don't need to be lovers. You don't need to be best friends.
mhm,
You need to get to a point where you can make things work. And
mhm,
if there is no way that you can make it work, then a different decision has to be made. And that can be on many levels. It could be you leaving, it could be you moving to a different department, different role, or you taking it to the next level with that person and maybe, going to a trade union, for example, or going to their manager. It all depends on the circumstances. It's very different depending on that person and what they're able to deal with.
Yeah, because if you have a person who's dreading going to work because of a certain set of people at work who are making their lives difficult, who are bullying them perhaps, or perhaps even worse, ignoring them, pretending they're not there, that
Absolutely.
could be just as painful.
And sometimes they're not in the right job.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're tolerating all of that because you figure I need a paycheck. But at the end of the day, is that even what you should be doing? Is that your calling? Is that I'm not talking about your dream job, but are we really working with your skill set, with your passion? Is that really what you want to do?
Mm,
And are you just doing it because you pay a bill? And many of us do that.
mhm,
We
mhm.
can segue away to move to something that really is befitting and is complementary to you.
Yeah, I certainly know people who've suffered in one job and then when they left, sometimes perhaps having to leave, they've ended up with a fantastic job afterwards, you know? And if they hadn't taken the courage to move, then
They
they
would,
would not be in this new blissful
and,
situation.
and again, that's where the values come in because we look at that really closely and say, if your values are X, Y, Z, then this role is so not right for you.
Mm,
So let's look at why you have this role. Let's see what happened and so forth. And fear is a big factor in most of our lives. We get driven by fear and we let fear take over. The fear of, oh, if I don't have making this amount of money, then I won't be able to pay my mortgage. Realistic, but it's not the be all and end all. Maybe you need to be looking for another job in a different industry, but doing the same thing. Maybe there's a lot of maybes. It all depends on the person, but fear is a big driver, and it's really, really awful because fear can really be crippling for most of us.
ooh, okay. Well, I like the angle that you say that you also do your work in a holistic and spiritual manner as well. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I sort of touched on it earlier a little bit. One of the things I like to do is it's kind of integrated what I do. So we do some video, we look at some video examples of things. We you always get homework, things for you to work on, but I also use crystals. Now, some people don't believe in it, so if that's not their bag, I don't bring it into the conversation. Meditation is a really big part. And a really important part for me is breath work. Breath work is so great for the soul. It calms you
Really?
down. Yeah, really calms you down. When I start a session, we start with breath work. Just clear the energy, get rid of whatever was happening around you. You might have been running from the bus to catch the call, or you might have been shouting at your 17-year-old, take off your clothes and go into your bed, whatever it is, you know what I mean? You come in with that stale energy. And so the first thing I do is we remove that energy because I want it to be a calm, serene space. This is your time that it's for you. And that's one of the things we as women struggle with, but that's another conversation, making time for ourselves. Um, and like I said, they're just other holistic things, looking at the food that you eat, looking at your lifestyle. It's a whole holistic view of where you are. It's not about one thing. It's not one dimensional at all.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Let's go back a bit. Tell us about your dreams and plans when you were younger, as a child, growing up, your education, how you ended up in New York. Were you born over there or born here? Or
Born in London.
tell us a little bit more about your backstory.
Yeah, so my parents are Jamaican, from a
I could
family.
tell from that little bit of patois you gave earlier on.
I'm a proud yardie. Uh, and they came to London in the 60s, like many of our parents did. And there was three of us. One got left behind, same old story.
Hmm.
And my brother and I grew up here together. I always wanted to be a journalist. I loved writing. I just wrote all day, every day when I was a kid. And I wanted to do that. But when I was probably 16, one of my uncles, who was a psychologist in New York, came to visit. And he said to me, "What are Black people doing in this country? I mean, what's going on? There's like no opportunities here for Black people. I
Really?
can't believe it." This was like late 70s. I mean, what's going on? You need to come to America and see what's going on. You need to feel the vibe. So I was excited. Of course, I'll go to America. So I went to New York when I turned 18 on holiday, and I stayed for 30 years.
Oh.
Literally just stayed. I was just consumed. I loved every day, every minute.
Oh,
I
wow.
had the most exciting lifestyle. I ended up working in investment banking. Excuse me. I did conferences and events. My territory was North, Central, and South America. I traveled most of the cities. I've seen many things that most people probably never see in their lifetime. I was very fortunate. I've experienced things. I did a private dinner for, oh gosh, which prime minister was it? It was quite funny dealing with the Secret Service. And when they called me to get clearance for him, it turned out that they wanted to know if I wanted any bacon or anything really English. Because we know you can't get bacon out there. We know you can't get a good sausage out there. So, we can bring any of that stuff through. So if you want it, we'll bring it. And I was just hilarious. And so, oh gosh, why can't I think of his name?
It's all right. You can tell me later.
Yeah. So anyway, so I've done dinners like that. I've done events in Miami where I've had conferences where we had Brazilian dancers and, you name it. I've stayed at, the top hotels. I've flown first class multiple times. I had an amazing, amazing life. However, I was in a marriage that no longer served me.
Oh.
And this person was just dragging me down, dragging me down, dragging me down. And I was in a job that was really, really taxing. You were literally on call 24/7, and they might call you on a Friday evening at home and say, "Listen, I need you to go to Rio on Monday." Like, this Monday? Yeah, yeah. I know we talked about earlier. I need you to go because you need to go and see the space, so we're not going to get it. Da, 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 da. And off I would be on a flight to Rio. So in the beginning, when you're, 25, 30, yeah, great. Pack your bags, you're gone. 15, 20 years into the business, flying on your own to Rio is not so glamorous. When you get to the hotel, you're in the hotel, you're not with your friends, you're not with your mates. And oftentimes, if you were doing what we call a site inspection, you're checking out the space, you're not with anyone, you're on your own. So it starts to get lonely on the road a lot. And it was great, but having all these, for me, the beauty of having any form of opulence is that you share it with the people that you love, whatever that is. So if the opulence is a beautiful house, you share it with the people you love. If I can drive a Mercedes Benz, I want to be able to take my friends out in my Benz or whatever it is. I'm just giving you examples. So, and that it was becoming less and less of that. And the distance between what I was making and my friends were making was becoming more like this. So when I'd go out with them, I'd invariably say, I'll treat you. And, people like that, but then sometimes people feel bit weird every time we go out, you're paying for dinner. Da, da, da. But it wasn't even all of that. The marriage wasn't going well. Work was really stressful. And I felt like I needed a break. But my mum was getting older. And I just kept thinking, I kept trying to encourage her to move to the States. And she was like, no, I mean, I leave my house. I have to leave my house for my children, blah, 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 blah.
Oh,
Like, oh, mom, but you know, you can rent it out. No, 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 no. This is my house. And she was fearful that if she came to live with me, and you know how it is when it's your house, you can do what you want. But when you stay in somebody else's house, she didn't want anyone dictating, oh, don't do this, don't do that.
yeah.
So I thought, you know what, maybe it's time for me to just come home for a few years and just see what's going on. So I moved back. I was in London first few years. And then I started to notice some strange things with my mum. Just didn't seem right. So I started going up one weekend a month, but going for 4 days so I could examine a bit closer. Come to find out that she had dementia.
Oh,
So managed that for a while, but it I couldn't manage it long distance. So at the time I had the money and I left my job and I moved in to take care of her.
oh,
I took care of her full time. And she passed away in 2018.
oh, I'm sorry.
Um, but the best joy of my life. You know, it was the most beautiful experience. I'll never have that time again. I remember I'd lived away for so many years, and
Mhm.
there was not one day my mother ever called me and made me feel guilty. The only thing she ever said to me was, if you ever decide I don't want to be there, you can always come home. There'll always be a space for you, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So tough one, but that was it. And it was during that time is when the whole transition to coaching happened because I had the time to sort of look at it. But as she became more and more ill, I had to sort of pull back a little bit and spend more time with her. So yeah,
So did
that
you come back to England with your husband or did you leave him in New York?
oh, I left him like a hot piece of coal.
Okay.
Mic drop.
Did you discuss it or did you just tell him this is
No, 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 no. We discussed it. And it was sort of what you talked about, the ignoring. I lived in fact, that's what my story was about. I called it preservation because I was in a relationship where I felt invisible. And a lot of people go through that, especially women. You're in this marriage, you're in this relationship, you know, whether you're married or not, you're living with this person per se. But for all intents and purposes, you might as well be by yourself.
Mm,
They're not contributing. They're just like a piece of dead wood just there.
mm.
And I really felt strongly about writing it. And I guess that's what resonated with people because they could relate to that. Feeling invisible is the worst thing. And it, as you said, it doesn't have to be a marriage, it could be a job.
Yeah.
Feeling invisible in any form of relationship is not a nice place to be.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So, you know, I literally sort of paid him off to leave. Like, here's some money, get out, here's a deposit for somewhere to live. And that was the only thing, because he didn't want to leave. He was just going to hang around and make me crazy.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Oh.
yeah,
Well, you are fortunate to be in that position to be able to do that. Um,
yes.
Others are trapped. So that's an
Well,
interesting.
you know, it's a choice of words, I would say. You say trapped, but sometimes we're trapped by the things we don't want to give up. And sometimes you have to give up everything, which is what I did to get out. You know, you got to do a Tina Turner, just leave everything in order to self-preserve.
Yes.
Sometimes we're trapped by the money, the comforts. Sometimes we say it's the children. Many mothers have raised children on their own. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's for you. Everyone's situation is very subjective.
Yes.
But sometimes we want to keep faith. I want everyone to know, you know, that I live in this big house and I drive this nice car and blah, 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 blah. At
Hmm.
the end of the day, you need to be focused on what you need to focus on because you get one life.
Yeah, exactly. One life. Very, very true. I've got to say though, you don't have much of an American accent, considering you spent 30 years there.
No, I know. And there was a whole plan behind that. So when I first went to the States, most people didn't even know there were Black people there. So they would just be freaking out. Oh my God, you're black and you don't have an accent. Oh my God, you don't, they
Oh,
couldn't
they
even
didn't
believe.
realize there were black people in England.
No, which I
Oh.
couldn't believe. But there wasn't that much media about us, so they genuinely didn't know. So I would go to places and I would get into nightclubs for free. I would get free drinks. I would get meals. They were just in awe. People just couldn't believe that I existed. It was like I was one. I mean, if you go to America now, there's tons of English people, at least in New York anyway. Um, so I was like, well, why would I have an American accent? How is that going to help me? I'm just going to blend in. This is out. I mean, I think for 15 years, I never interviewed for a job. I just called someone and said, hey, is there anything going on at your place? And, connections, which is the name of my organization, my company, Joy of Connection, all about connections. I would keep in touch with people. And so when I needed to ask that favor or do you know, or can you help, blah, 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 the relationship was still there.
Mm.
And it's something that I just happen to be very good at. And so, yeah, and people it just happened. No one, yeah, I was unique for many, 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 many years. So I just thought, well, there's no reason to blend in, you know. And so I didn't, and I stood out, and it worked to my benefit.
Mm. Okay, well done. Well, I've got to say, it sounds like you should be writing your own book. I know you said you took part in an anthology, but it sounds like you need to be writing your own book, giving more details about your life and how people can have successful relationships.
That's a good point. I think I'll take that one on board. I like that. I like that. I like that.
Yeah,
You know
absolutely.
what? I'm all about joy. As I said, my company is called Joy of Connection, and my number one passion is traveling. But I don't even know if it's my number two. It might be my one and one. But my other passion is salsa dancing. It
Oh,
brings me such joy. It's kind of what led me to meet my partner. Um, I think I mentioned earlier that I'm a super manifester. And when I officially got divorced, this is quite interesting. When I got officially divorced in 20, I think it was 2013. I don't even remember the year because that was in the past. When I officially got divorced, I decided I'd been to Cuba a couple of times and I decided I was going to take myself on a celebratory trip for 5 days. And I was in New York visiting some people. I was going to go from there. And I got down on my knees and I said, Universe, God, beloved, I'm ready for a relationship now. I am truly free and I am ready. So bring it on. Bring it on. And I got up and I was like, yeah. And I walked out the room and I was like, right. And I could feel it from my head to my toe. I could feel that I'd embodied that affirmation that is what I wanted. That's what I needed next. And that was on the Friday, and I went to Cuba, or that was on the Thursday, and I went to Cuba on the Friday. On the Friday night, I had dinner with some friends. And on the Saturday morning, I went for a salsa class. Now I can salsa, but I love it. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be great at it. So I went for this 2 hour session. I walked out. It was the most amazing session. This guy made me feel like I was the best dancer in the world. It was amazing. However, the studio had no air conditioning. It had rained and it was probably about 32 degrees. So I came out of there and I was kind of like,
great.
I need to get out. I need to get to my Airbnb and shower. So I'm marching along, not minding my own business, trying to get back to my room. And I hear somebody say to me in Spanish, Hola, ¿qué tal? Blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh God, not now. I cannot be talking to anyone. I look like a wreck. I just can't even, just no, please. Just ignore. I speak Spanish, so I completely understood, but I was just sort of walking like this, like I can't hear them. Walking and walking. They're speaking and speaking. So, but they're at distance, they're not on top of me, but and then the person said, I love your hair. So I always used to wear my hair with 3 different colors. And I turned around and then I said, I'm so sorry. I don't speak Spanish. I don't know what you're saying. And I just thought, oh, that will stave him off. And then he said, oh, but I speak English. I said, oh, to myself. And I think that was in 2017. That's when I met my partner.
Oh,
And tomorrow will
that
be
was him.
him.
Mm.
That's how it started. And tomorrow will be our 7 years of being together,
Oh,
3rd of June. So it can happen if that's what you really want.
yeah. Oh,
I
my.
was ready and I really empowered it, and that's the kind of stuff that I teach and talk about, and I'm living proof of it. So, and I have a really beautiful relationship. I'm really fortunate. He does drive me crazy though. As I said, there's no halo going on there.
Yeah, well,
They
it's
do
hard
come
to
to try
find,
at
it's
times,
hard or impossible to find the perfect person. And then if
doesn't
that
it?
person is perfect, you'd probably be a little bored anyway. So
Exactly.
a little bit of imperfection is probably not so bad.
It's
I was going
beautiful.
to ask you what's your hobbies, but you've sort of told me one of them now is salsa. Have you got any videos of you dancing salsa?
I'm sure I do. I'm sure I do because I'm just obsessed with it.
Well, I'm sure our audience would love to see one of those videos. So
Oh,
hopefully you'll send us a clip that we can include in this.
okay.
What are your other hobbies?
Travel is probably the main one, salsa, but excuse me, I love the arts in general. I love going to the theater. When I lived in New York, I was completely obsessed. I mean, every month I went to the theater. Even now, I've been back 12 years, I think now, 11 years. And oftentimes friends will say, "Do you want to see this?" No, I saw that in New York. Saw it so many years ago.
Oh, excuse
I've
me.
seen so many, many things, but it doesn't mean I never go again. But I would say,
Yeah.
I've seen it, isn't that great? But obsessed with theatre, love film, love all things Spanish. My goal is to retire in Spain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, all things Spanish. Food, I go at least 2, 3 times a year. I love it.
Okay.
Um, but I love the weather more than anything else.
Yeah.
And that's my number one struggle with being back in the UK. It's just the weather. That's another conversation for another day on weather. But yeah, I would say all of the arts, whether it's music, whether it's dancing, I'll do everything from opera right back to ballet, right back to, Buena Vista Social Club, you name it. Anything in the arts, I just embody. I love it. I embrace it. I love it.
Okay. So you've been doing your coaching business now, is it for about 8 years or so?
Yeah, it's about 8 years. Yeah.
Okay. All right. How would you encourage someone if they wanted to do something similar to you, whether it's coaching for careers or coaching for gardening? How would you encourage someone to start a coaching business? What would they need to do?
They need to get proper training. There are lots of people on the internet saying, "I'm a coach," and they've done a weekend course
Mm.
or they've done, something that's not really certifying you. They need to get proper training because you're dealing with people's lives. So, we need to get it right. We need to know that we've got the right training. And then once you've got the training, you start with your friends and family. You test your product. You get, the people that love you and trust you are the ones that will give you the right answers. Yeah, I didn't feel that it was really helpful. I didn't really like that. Or why did you say this? And you build your skill, you get to know your skill. And then you slowly, slowly start with one client, see how that goes, and maybe get another client and always get really great feedback. And people are afraid of feedback. But for me, no feedback is negative. You can always learn something. You
Mhm.
can always improve. It's great when the feedback's wonderful, but sometimes the feedback isn't that wonderful, and it may be about you. It may be about the client. It doesn't matter. But if it's about you, but you're not sure, your ego's saying that can't be right. That's not real. Then when you have your next client, if the feedback's similar, then you can start to say, well, maybe it is something about my style or my delivery, or maybe that was a one-off. So yeah, I'm going to ignore that.
Okay. All right. What's your pricing?
Well, it really depends on what the issue is, but it can start anywhere from £200 to 1,500.
Okay.
So Depends on how deep we need to get, what we're trying to resolve. Is it a quick 4-week program? Are you doing group coaching? Because I've got a group coaching program that I'm going to start in July. So is it something where we're doing a group coaching program and that's a lot cheaper? Or is it one-to-one? And how many sessions are we going to need? How deep are we going to need to go? How long is it going to take? So it
Yeah.
just depends on what you
Okay.
need.
Understood. All right. Well, I hope that the fact that you've opened up yourself and shared a little bit about your life and your services, I hope that is an encouragement to other people, who may want to talk about relationships,
Yeah.
whatever situation they're in. And also, you may find people contacting you with regards to being a coach themselves. So either way, you could be a very useful person to know.
Absolutely, absolutely. It'd be my pleasure. So, what I'll do is, I believe I've sent it to you, but they can reach me either on Instagram. I have a Facebook group that they can join, so they can get a feel for who I am first. They can email me or they can ring me. Any of those methods. I'm available on most types of social media and Facebook as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And my organization, my company's called Joy of Connection.
Yeah, we had a little giggle about the original name because when we first started talking, you sent me a link and it was joyspot.co.uk. And then you said you had to change the name. Why? Joyspot sounded great.
Yeah, I mean, when I say change the name, the parent company is still Joy Spot, but the coaching is now Joy of Connection because it seems a bit more fitting. But I used to get a lot of comments, especially from men. Oh, I'd love to talk to you about your Joy Spot, or can you talk to me about my Joy Spot? And it became very sexual, and I was just fed up with this. So I've kept it as the parent company name, but the product is called Joy of Connection.
Okay, understood. Understood. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a
Well,
pleasure talking to you. And I think I understand a little bit more now about relationships. Uh, we will have our
well,
stories to tell, I can tell you.
yeah, if you don't mind, I'll also give you a link. I did a podcast for a few years, mostly I think it was sort of during COVID now, and it's on YouTube as well, and you can see some of the people I've interviewed. And like anything else, it's a perfect example when you first start out. When I go back and I look at some of the original ones, I think, oh, look at me on camera, because I think a lot of people have a fear of being on camera. And then you can see the progression as you get further along, how much better, as you hone your skill, you get better at it. But one of my favorite interviews is with a gentleman in the UK called John DeLissa. Mark DeLissa, I think it is Mark DeLissa, and he has an organization called Singology. And during COVID, he was amazing. Black man as well. He got people to sing from their homes online and really
Oh,
come together. And it was really beautiful, really beautiful. So that's one of my favorite interviews, but there are many on there. And yeah,
okay, brilliant. So people can basically get information or education from you via
yeah,
your YouTube channel.
yeah,
Okay, then. We'll put a link to that as well, the base of this interview.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us and for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Dawn. It was a pleasure to meet with you.
I'm sure we will connect again at another time.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
The revolution is here. LionX AI services. AI chat, your questions and our AI assistant's answers. Write blog post in a single click. Create AI images, free trial. In an era where technology is rapidly evolving, the line between human potential and artificial intelligence becomes increasingly blurred. However, rather than viewing AI as a threat to our capabilities, it's time we embrace it as a tool for enhancement and empowerment.